Yeah.
OK, anything else?
Yes, so the next one is from The Guardian, which says, next year may be the first in a century Britain is not at war.
Now...
Isn't that fascinating?
Well, it is and it isn't, because if you look... The way The Guardian has made this work is by including Northern Ireland as a war zone. Because if you look at sort of Gulf War I to Gulf War II, you had Kosovo in between, but there were certainly plenty of years either side of Kosovo where we weren't involved, or the Balkans, where we weren't involved in conflict. But the interesting thing about including Northern Ireland is the British government always refused to accept the IRA's declaration of war. So we weren't actually at war in Northern Ireland. We were engaged.
It was still a time when we were sending our soldiers out at risk of their own lives.
We were, but we weren't. The government went to great pains to, because if we were in a state of war, it would have meant that we recognised the IRA paramilitaries as a legitimate fighting force. They would then be protected under the Geneva Convention and so on and so forth. You wouldn't be allowed to have things like shoot to kill, which,
but you could say the same about the war on terror, then, couldn't you? And I suppose we're still in the war on terror.
Well, there you go. So I don't think the headline stacks up personally.
Don't shoot the messenger. Just
no. It's just you know, think. Oh, no, we've definitely had periods where we're not at war. And,
yeah.
In fact, I think the last century, by and large, was one of our more peaceful centuries, despite 2 world wars.
But that was the Cold War, you know.
Yeah.
And that was still quite
and
scary.
2 world wars.
Yeah, and 2 world wars.
Yeah. OK.
And then on to The Sun, which says, Sir must dress to impress. So it's a story, you know, saying that teachers should smarten up their act and, you know, not go, you know, to school in trainers and all that kind of stuff.
Is that how teachers turn up to school these days?
I think some of them are pretty scruffy, she said, really controversially. I have seen a couple, you know, some teachers who are a bit scruffy.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
I think it's good that they have to...
I think they should
I
be
always
smart.
remember when I went to school, my teachers used to wear suits, shirts, ties. I think
elbow pads,
yeah, exactly.
hush puppies,
Yes.
Exactly.
tired expression on
Setting
their
an example.
face.
Yeah. Never used to smoke in cars.
Mortarboard and the
Yeah.
academic gown.
No, I think it's fantastic. You're setting an example to children. Dress smartly.
But if the example is to give them a little insight into what their future's going to be like, you want to dress like a homeless person, don't you? Because you're not going to have anywhere to live and you're not going to have a job.
Yeah.
Get used to it, kids.
Trousers
this is what you're going to be
halfway
like
down
when you're
your bum,
my age.
because that's the cool thing nowadays, apparently. What's all that about?
I don't know what that's about.
What is that about?
What, the
trousers halfway down.
Let's ask Ben. You're young, Ben.
I've got a rip on here. My mum always says, you know,
Ben's
can't you afford, you know, proper jeans? So, you know...
But the carroty trousers, you know, with the crotch down by your knees.
I'm not fashionable whatsoever, so I bow out of that.
I don't think they are harem pants, Screech. You keep saying that. I think they're called carrots. That's what I was told by somebody here, in the world of TV. Carrots.
Isn't it just skateboarders that wear that? Or is that just, no, just everyone nowadays?
Oh, look, don't do this, we're showing our age. Let's not do that.
No.
Anyway, nicely done, Ben. What have you got, Anne?
Basically, this is about a man that was travelling around the world, taking Woody from Toy Story and taking pictures...
That's suspicious to me, you
Taking pictures of Woody in different places for his son.
That's what he says.
OK, that's what he says. And then, apparently, the story is that he went to Heathrow and the gun was taken away from Woody because it was a terrorist threat.
I mean, come on.
And myself, personally, I don't believe a word of it. I really don't. I think this is someone that wanted to have a bit of a laugh and got it because
well, you say that. But Ben was telling me you had... But did you have your mic?
I had my mic, like I have a portable studio, and when I was taking it from country to country, I had my microphone confiscated because they thought it looked a little bit like a bomb, because they'd never seen it before. So, I mean, but this is a very different story. I mean, this is clearly a
I had a fishing
little
rod taken
plastic
off because
gun.
in case that was posed a danger. I mean,
You do look quite dodgy, though, to be fair.
Thanks, James.
Just saying.
You're not the first to have said it. Now, a little later, we're trying to find out if men should have the right to see their baby born, even if the mother doesn't want him anywhere near her in the delivery room. Men's rights, 0207 173 5555 is the number. Have you got a story? See your eyes rolling from there. I can see your eyes rolling out. Right now, though, I want to know if we've become too disconnected from death for our own good, because America's founding father, Benjamin Franklin, famously said over 200 years ago that there are only 2 certainties in life, death and taxes. These days, though, we're increasingly isolated from the former. We don't see our meat being butchered, but we buy it in nice sanitised polystyrene packs. And when a Danish zoo, we heard yesterday, threw the body of a dead giraffe into the lion's enclosure, there was outrage. I mean, heavens to Betsy, there were kids watching the lions eat. That story reminded me of the scandal of Marcus the sheep 5 years ago. You remember the primary school head who had to briefly step down after buying a lamb for her pupils to raise to slaughter, and angry parents wanted her out. She's got her job back. And I've often wondered since then, what is the problem? Psychologists will tell you it's healthy to have a good awareness of death. An awareness of our own mortality, of the fragileness of life, helps stop us doing stupidly dangerous things and, the neck-nominate stuff. And the head doctors worry that our increasing disconnection from the Reaper is also fueling what some describe as a Peter Pan outlook on life, that we're all going to live forever. And that, in turn, means that we don't prepare to meet our Maker. I think only 1 in 10 of us has planned our funeral. And we used to, of course, have a lot more death in our lives. I mean, 2 world wars within the last 100 years saw to that. Many cultures, India's Hindus, for example, they're much more involved in death. And maybe their proximity makes them more comfortable with the concept. So rather than shy away from explaining why your kid's hamster is dead, oh, it's run away, or it's going to join its little hamster friends down at the Heath, maybe you parents should get your children to touch its cold, hard body, Anne.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that always used to be one of the good reasons to have a pet when you were young, because it did teach you about all of the things to do with loving and nurturing and looking after, and what would happen if you neglect it. And I raised tons of guinea pigs, loads of them, and I dealt with their little cold, hard bodies and buried them and everything.
From how old?
At least 9. I do think we have to be very careful not to traumatise kids when they're very little.
The trauma only comes from parents, I would suggest, perhaps over-fussing, because it is a reality.
Yeah, I do think throwing a giraffe to the lions in front of a load of kids who had just done the zoo for the day.
And how do lions eat in the wild?
Well, yeah, but we don't live in the wild. We don't live out there with them.
We take these wild creatures, we imprison them in an artificial world, and then we deprive them of their natural source of food.
No,
or we say they can have their natural source of food, but no one can watch.
That's a different argument.
That happened in Denmark. Let the Danish do what they want. We're a little bit more civilised than that.
Oh, but what good is it doing us?
Well, hang on. People get killed every day, so you know what? Let's get someone, kill someone in front of children and let them know what it...
But neck nominate, which is a drinking craze in which you could argue that people are recklessly endangering their lives.
Yes.
If people actually thought it through about the consequences, about the fragility of life, maybe they wouldn't do that. Maybe our civilization, right, the fact that we're all so civilised, we don't get our hands dirty with death, actually leads to us thinking we're going to live forever.
No, but we had this conversation yesterday that we said men are very competitive, and that is always going to happen. I don't think it's necessary.
And young men always think
and
they're
that
going
is
to
the
live
thrill,
forever
isn't it?
anyway.
That
Have you seen today's
dangerous.
papers with all the women doing neck nominate?
Yeah.
But they're not so competitive, are they? Why are they there doing it?
It's the thrill, isn't it? It's the fact that it is dangerous. That's why they're doing it. They
Or they don't think about the
Of course
consequences.
they do. Of course.
Do you think everybody who takes a pill in a rave in a nightclub, they're thinking that they might end up dead, or are they thinking they're just
No,
gonna have
because
a
they
laugh?
always think it happens to someone else.
Right.
They know it happens,
right, okay.
but they still know it happens.
You're coming round to my way of thinking
No,
here. Death happens to other people, not to me.
But there's
That's
a difference between letting people know that, what the effects of death and there are consequences to what you do, and then absolutely horrifying, kids. I mean, if I'd have been, a witness, even at the age of 32, to skinning a giraffe and chopping it up and stuff like that, I would never want to,
But if you had been introduced... Now, I've got a friend who's a gamekeeper up in Shropshire. His children have been introduced to dead things since they were literally babies that couldn't speak. For them to see their father, or indeed themselves, skin a rabbit is entirely natural. Doesn't register for them at all. So if you've been introduced to it earlier, before you were even conscious, then you wouldn't see it as a problem.
No, but then they're being brought up on within an environment where it's okay. Whereas if you have like a regular environment and then all of a sudden
a civilised environment, as James said,
but what is the
a
benefit?
civilised environment where we don't get exposed to it, then we become increasingly disconnected, and then it becomes increasingly more traumatic.
But most of us live in an environment where those kind of things don't happen on a daily basis. So if you go through your regular life, going to school in London, blah blah, and then you suddenly see the skinning of a giraffe, then you're going to be horrified.
Probably, I mean, I mean, Anne and I, you can definitely remember butcher shops when you used to go sawdust on the floor,
say, yes,
blood,
absolutely.
carcasses hanging up.
So I
Now,
would find that revolting.
But,
like when you
but
walk
I
past.
was from that knee high when my mum was going shopping. You know, you didn't buy meat in pre-packaged packs in supermarkets. You bought it from your butcher.
You see, I agree with.
And
I think that's wrong. I mean, I'm a vegetarian, as you know, and I think if you want to eat meat, you should be prepared to go into a butcher's shop and see how it's butchered. Maybe even go to an abattoir and see how it's killed. And if you're happy with that, then eat the meat.
I did go to an abattoir, and I was
fine.
vegetarian for 11 years as a result. So you got something going on
My
there.
was a butcher, so I understand that. But to actually kill something in front of children, I think is taking it a
It
step
wasn't
too
killed
far.
in front. It was only the body.
What
was
is the
put down.
benefit? You're saying, oh, it desensitizes you from when family and things like that die, but at the end of the
I'm
day,
saying that it's
if your father
unusual.
dies, you're going to grieve over it.
I'm saying that it's. I'm not saying you're not going to grieve. That's a totally different issue. I'm just saying that right now we are probably as removed from death as any society anywhere on the world in any part of history has ever been, and I'm not sure it's doing us any
No,
good.
it's not.
But isn't that
I
quite a
don't see
nice
it's doing
thing
us
to
any harm.
live in a sort of Peter Pan existence where, you know, you don't focus for your whole life on dying. You're going to die at some point, but wouldn't you like to have a life that you sort of enjoy
Yes, but
living?
it
rather
results in a society which doesn't know how to handle death. And
Right.
anyone who's lost anyone knows what it's like. People literally do cross the road rather than come up to you and talk to you
Yep.
because they don't know how to handle you because you've just
Yep.
lost somebody. And we have become a society, in Britain certainly, that just don't know how to handle death. We'd prefer not to talk about it. And we actually leave people alone to their grieving until sort of 4 or 6 or 8 weeks later, and then we hope that they've
I went
left it
to
behind.
a Hindu funeral where my friend's father had died, and he was lying in the family house. And bearing in mind that I didn't see my dad after he died, in this particular instance, we were all invited, friends and family, to come round and rub ghee, clarified butter, into the deceased's foot. Now, not only did that's the first time I'd actually touched a dead body, but I'm also touching my mate's dad's dead body, which was a peculiar sensation at first, but afterwards, I really got that the Hindu thing, that it actually demystifies and makes death far less frightening.
See, I don't get it at all. So that's my and I'm sure there's lots of people out there that think exactly the same as me. I didn't go to a funeral until I was in my 20s.
Right.
Yeah, obviously I was fortunate enough that my grandparents lived quite a long time. I would have gone to their funeral had I been much younger, but my parents protected me from that, and I'm happy they did. I still understand what death is about, but the same token, if my family, my parents die, I'm going to be upset. I want to grieve on my own. I don't want to be, oh, don't worry, my dad died, because I'm desensitised by it. I think protect children from it. Otherwise, we might as well just let them watch movies like Saw and things like that. I mean, where does it stop?
But if you want to educate them, there are plenty of DVDs out there where you can see giraffes being fed, or ripped apart. And you can educate them through that. I don't think they need to see it live.
I do find it peculiar. I do find it peculiar that we can...
Yes, good.
That we can put a lion in an enclosure and we get all squeamish about it eating a giraffe. I mean, I do find that
We shouldn't
absolutely
do, because that's what lions do.
bizarre,
And we're actually... We're teaching the wrong thing if we don't
And
show
what you
it,
get instead, and you see it in wildlife parks and so forth, is a keeper will throw a lump of pre-butchered meat at them, and you think, well, now lions are being treated like we are when we go to the supermarket.
Yeah, but you're talking about someone killing a giraffe, not on wildlife programme, the giraffe being killed.
But the giraffe has been killed. What are you going to do with its body? Throw it away or give it to the lions?
Yeah, but it was killed for that reason.
No, but they're doing the
wasn't it?
right thing with the...
I'm not quibbling about the reason of the killing of the giraffe. I'm saying that once you've got a dead giraffe, what do you do with it? Feed it to the lions?
Yeah, in front of the children.
Why
Fabulous.
not? Let's find out what people say at home. I think